still speak to us today. So I'd like to invite you into joining me in our opening words with a responsive reading. I will read the regular text if you will join me on the italicized. This is a piece called A Network of Mutuality by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. There we go. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. We shall hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. As we ponder these words from some 60 years ago, we hear their echoes in today's events. We hear echoes in the singing of the time as well as people fought for their civil rights. And while we know the shape of today's fight may be slightly different, the hate and the rhetoric that underlies it comes from the same stem. In that spirit, I invite you to join me in singing hymn number 169, We Shall Overcome. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. And our song leaders will come forward and help us. a story for us this morning. I could not get through it without crying earlier, so we'll see what happens this time. This is called We Dream a World, carrying the light from my grandparents, Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, by Ronalda Renee King, illustrated by Nicole Tadgill. Granddaddy and Grandma, you had a dream. We would be judged by what's in our hearts, not by the color of our skin. You were gone before I came into this world, but that dream and so many others live deep inside me. Everything you believed in still shines like the brightest sunrise on a golden horizon. Many ask me, do you plan to follow in Dr. King and Coretta Scott King's footsteps? How will you fill their shoes? Do you have what it takes to walk their path? I hold fast to all that you stood for: peace, togetherness, harmony, and love. Granddaddy and Grandma, thanks to your wisdom and determination, I now have my own footsteps, my own journey, my own dreams for our world. And so, while I follow your example, I am also ready to lead. I am ready to walk the uncertain road from today to tomorrow. I am ready to keep my eyes on the prize that you set out before us with the power of your vision. Yes, Grandma Coretta. Yes, Granddaddy Martin. I am ready. Every day, I thank you for the gifts you gave so many of us through your hard work. Because of you, I know that struggle and triumph are bigger than just me. The promise of a new day starts with me. You helped us see the dream. Now we are here to be the dream. The wisdom of your words weaves a rainbow that lights our way. Granddaddy, you told us love is the key. Grandma, you taught us when the heart is right, the mind and body will follow. These words, these keys to our hearts, open the door to all that is possible. My parents remind me that in your lives together, you shared what came to be called a revolution of values. I'm sorry, there are still so many problems to endure. You devoted your lives to making our lives better. And now, it's my turn to start a new revolution that values kindness, truth, equality, and service. There are still rocks in the road. I wish you were here so we could walk it together. Because our dreams need the strength of a love so powerful that nothing can stop them or us. We dream a world where school is a safe place, free of fear. No violence spoken here. We dream a world where guns are not games. Shoot for the stars, not at each other. We dream a world where poverty is a memory. Liberty, justice, and food for all. We dream a world where the only walls are those that hold safe spaces and have windows and mirrors to reflect our unity. Beauty has no boundaries. We dream a world where trees, flowers, and the earth's creatures thrive in their right seasons. Spring, summer, winter, fall, honesty is the warmest climate. We dream a world where bullies turn their backs on being mean. Let kindness begin with me. We dream a world where sickness can be driven out by the healing power of hope and modern medicine. Love is the cure. Just like that. We dream a world where every child can go to college. Education fuels our nation. Reading is believing. Grandma and Granddaddy, so many want to know, how will you honor your grandparents' legacy? The answer is simple. We keep your dreams alive by planting our dreams like trees in an orchard to be nurtured by tomorrow's gardeners. With determined feet blazing a path, a new path, we are ready to take the torch you lit before we were born. We are ready to grip that glistening baton, to hold faith by the hand, to pass it on. We are ready to reach, to rise, to sparkle like the stars in a bold blue sky. Our time has come to bring our twinkle, letting everyone know. Spread the word. Have you heard? All across the nation, we are going to be a great generation. From today to tomorrow, we dream a world. We hold a lot of dreams these days. Some of them feel more distant than they did even a few weeks ago, but that should not stop our dreaming. We know that when we come together here in this faith, our single individual dreams become collective dreams. And here we hold power, we create power for change in this world. But that change isn't always big and outside, although it is sometimes that, and I'll talk about that in a bit. That change also happens by the way we practice community in this space, by the way we hold one another, Yesterday, we ordained Reverend Chad Snyder into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. And I had the honor of giving the charge to the congregation. And I said in that time that ministers hold the anger, the fear, the hurt, the sadness, and the hope and the love of the congregation. But that isn't quite right because we don't hold it alone. We create the container for each of us to hold one another here in community. And that is something we practice each Sunday when we come together. We practice living out the dream of community that we want to see by holding the joys and sorrows that are happening in each of our own lives. Now I would invite us into a musical response, singing together, "There is a Love." Please remain seated. I am doing a lot of deep breathing this morning. Each year, the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which we are a part, our broader governance organization, gathers for an annual convention, General Assembly. And it is a time-honored tradition that we invite a prophetic voice from the world to come and speak to us at something called the Ware Lecture. In 1966, can anyone guess who our Ware lecturer was? Martin Luther King Jr. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this was after many of what people think of as the big events today, but still very much in the middle of the civil rights era. It was 2 years before King would be shot. But Unitarian Universalists had been in relationship with Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. throughout his formation process. Many of our leaders were with him in seminary and in conversation with him throughout his whole journey. And when he put out a call for clergy to come and march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965, UU clergy from across the country responded. So it was no surprise that we would invite him to speak at Aware Lecture and share directly with our people that prophetic message. But I want to remind us that Unitarian Universalists don't have a clean record when it comes to justice work. While our values have always called us to fight for justice, to be anti-racist, to stand with the oppressed, we have not always lived up to that call fully. In fact, Reverend Mark Morrison Reed has written a number of books, particularly about the civil rights era. One called The Selma Awakening, How the Civil Rights Movement Tested and Changed UUism in 2014. Ooh. And then a little more recently, he wrote something called Revisiting the Empowerment Controversy, Black Power and UUism. So if you want to know more about our history and the ways in which we have both shown up and failed to show up, I would encourage you to pick up one of those books or one of the other many readings that are available. I am not going to go into that 5 Sunday sermon series that I could preach on it today. But I am going to ask Katie to read a short excerpt of the 10-page Ware lecture. The lecture itself was called Don't Sleep Through the Revolution. Seems apropos today.
I talk a great deal about the need for a kind of divine discontent. And I always mention that there are certain technical words within every science which become stereotypes and cliches. Modern psychology has a word that has become common. It is the word maladjusted. We read a great deal about it. It is a ringing cry of modern child psychology. And certainly we all want to live the well-adjusted and avoid neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But I must say to you this evening, my friends, there are some things in our nation and in our world to which I am proud to be maladjusted. And I call upon you to be maladjusted, and all people of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I never intend to adjust myself to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, and leave millions of people perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of prosperity. I must honestly say, however much criticism it brings, that I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism and to the self-defeating effects of physical violence. Yes, I must confess that I believe firmly that our world is in dire need of a new organization, the International Association for the Advancement of Creative Maladjustment. Men and women as maladjusted as the prophet Amos, who in the midst of the injustices of his day cried out in words that echo across the centuries, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." As maladjusted as Abraham Lincoln, who had the vision to see that this nation could not survive half slave and half free. As maladjusted as Thomas Jefferson, who in the midst of an age of of an age amazingly adjusted to slavery, cried in words lifted to cosmic proportions, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As maladjusted as Jesus of Nazareth, who could say to the men and women of his day, "He who lives by the sword will perish by the sword." Through such maladjustment, we will be able to emerge from the bleak and desolate midnight of man's inhumanity to man into the bright and glittering daybreak of freedom and justice.
With the exception of the gendered language, we could preach exactly that today. Those words are still prophetic. They still call us in this moment. I had the privilege last fall of making a pilgrimage with a number of my colleagues to Montgomery, Alabama. And we visited the Equity, Justice, and Inclusion Museum. We visited the legacy sites. We visited the Rosa Parks Museum. And we spent time reflecting on how the stories from the civil rights era impacted what was happening in our world today. We asked questions that were probing. It is easy on this day to hold up the man, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who did powerful things, as a figurehead. To think of him in perfection and a gold gilding. But he suffered extreme depression bouts. He struggled with knowing whether his words were having any impact on anyone. He was not well liked in his time. He was on FBI watch lists. People didn't want to hear what he had to say. Certainly people in power didn't want to hear what he had to say. And I think remembering the man rather than the myth is an important part of today. But also remembering the movement that the man was grounded in. It's easy to think of these figureheads as doing the heavy lifting. But the reality is, it was all the people surrounding him doing the heavy lifting and inspiring his words. When we were going through these museums, our facilitators challenged us with a question. They said, whose voices are missing from this narrative? What was happening with the everyday person living in these situations? Which stories are being told and which ones are silent? We think about Rosa Parks and her story of sparking the bus boycott. She was not the first one to be kicked off those buses. She was not the first one who refused to move, but hers was the story that found traction and was lifted up. We hear the same narrative today with Renee Good. Her story is critical and important to the narrative we are telling, but it is not the whole story. She is not the first to have been killed by ICE. I have to remind myself, and perhaps you do too, that I am not Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in this story. And that does not mean I don't have an important part to play. It makes it all the more important that each of us show up in the ways that we can, because it is not the figurehead that makes the movement, it is all the people together. The march was not successful because one person was marching. The march was successful because it filled the streets and blocked the traffic and sent a message that we shall not be moved. We will stay until we are heard. The day after Renee Good's murder, I was at the site for a clergy press conference and surrounded by the beauty and diversity of this city. I saw faces of every color speaking together. 1 week later, I gathered with the same organization calling for a clergy press conference. There was a noticeable difference in the crowd. There were 2, maybe 3 folks who clearly could not pass for white, but the rest of us were very pale of skin. And we were standing outside Target headquarters downtown, demanding that they take a stand, demanding that corporate power join with the power of the people rather than sit in apathy and non-response to things that are happening in their own stores. I was joined there by the United Church of Christ's new minister here at New Brighton, Reverend Cynthia. And as we went from the press conference outside to the action inside to demand a meeting with the CEO, 120 clergy crossed the street and went up the escalators singing "This Little Light of Mine," arm in arm. And then we circled round in the gathering entry area in corporate Target inside and sang for almost a half an hour, "We shall not be moved," calling out the verses as we felt moved to sing them together. Some of you may have seen a short clip of that in the Thursday update this week. And I will tell you what, I had shivers and chills up my spine the whole time. I had spent time theoretically thinking about what it might be like last fall to be in one of these moments, and then there I was, in the moment, feeling the fear, and still doing the thing that I could do. Don't get me wrong, I am not showing up for all the things. Being very selective, and I will not tell you all to show up for all the things. That won't help anyone. I'm not going to tell you either to stay safe or to show up for all the things, because safety is relative and not an option for some of us whose very existence in this world makes us a target right now. What I will ask you to do in this time is to assess your own levels of risk. That's different for each of us. I talked about mine a little bit last week. And I will ask you to not go it alone. This work is best done in community with one another. There is a call going out this week to faith clergies all across the country, just as it did back in 1965, to gather and to march. This coming Friday, there is an action planned, a march. You'll see some of the details in the Thursday update. And there are already hundreds of clergy saying they will come from all across the country to stand in solidarity and march in solidarity with us, calling for a moral revolution, the same call Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made so many years ago. If you can be there, join me. Know that the weather says the high is -5 for Friday. We are putting lots of posts up about how people can buy wool and wear ski masks and keep themselves safe for our southern ministers and colleagues who are coming up and have no idea how to handle the cold. But I know many of us cannot do that march or should not do that march because it would be a risk to our own health in ways that are not worth it, because there are other ways to contribute. In a little bit, we'll have a special offering. But I want to invite those of you who are well known in this congregation, if you have a space in your house that you would be willing to open for one of those clergy who are driving hundreds of miles or who are spending hundreds on flights to come in. They'll have a training on Thursday and then march with us on Friday. If you have a space, let me know. We have a form to fill out if you would be willing to extend home hospitality. But I know that this trauma is living in our bodies. So I want to give us a chance to march today. In case you aren't able to march, I want to give you an opportunity to feel that moment and to know that your body and your presence matter. Whatever else you may or may not be able to do, you are here in this space as an act of resistance. So I'm going to invite us into singing. What's our hymn number, Bruce? 10:30. The words will be up on the screen. You don't really need your hymnals. Those of you at home, I will also invite you, as your bodies are willing and able to get up and move. We're going to sing the first verse standing in place, and then for those who are willing and able, I'm going to invite us to circle around this set of pews and walk and march together. If you really need to move more, go out in the hall and come around and in again. For those who want to move faster and get your body going, because that can help get some of the trauma out of your system and clear a little bit of fog as we sing and move together. So please rise in body and spirit as you're willing and able, and join me in singing, and after the first verse in marching or walking as you are able. It's Sia Hamba Kukonekwe Kos.
I'm going to sing it first in Zulu. Okay. Look the wording on her. And go try to do it. Right? So the first time through, it will be in Zulu. Sia Hamba Ekuka Yan. And you, yeah. So you see it on there. Then we'll sing it in English. But we're going to play it in Zulu. So make sure you have the Zulu music.
Let us now enter into a spirit of generosity, remembering that we are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. We've had lots of words, so I'm just going to explain a little bit about a special collection today. Today we're having an emergency special collection. This is the information. It was also put in the Thursday update. This past week, ICE has separated families residing in the Fridley Terrace Mobile Home Park. This park is one of the locations where we deliver Meals on Wheels, so the impacted families are very much our neighbors. A GoFundMe account has been set up to help these families with rent, food, and other necessities. Undesignated contributions today will be passed on to this GoFundMe on behalf of our congregation. As usual, we'll pass a basket here in person. If you are on Zoom or prefer to give online, please use the instructions on the screen.
As we close our service today, I would like to invite you to join me again in the words that we opened with, A Network of Mutuality by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day, we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. We shall hew a mountain of despair, a stone of hope.